Well, there was a lot of complaining in Toronto Blue Jays land about the Dodgers deferring money. Well, now the Blue Jays have done the same thing. What does this all mean? How does it work? We're explaining it all, going in depth on what can be better about the deferral process.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On MLB for $20 off your first purchase. As always, I'm Braden Walsco. He's Carter First. You can find us on Twitter, Braden5 Walsco, Carter First too, as well on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Blue Jays. If you're new here to YouTube or you're listening anywhere else, make sure you head over to the YouTube page. You drop a subscription, you hit the bell notification. We really appreciate it. It's free to do so. You might as well. Keeps us top of your page, like I said. And you get live streams, videos, podcasts, shorts, the whole ordeal, everything. YouTube is sort of the hub of the channel, so make sure you guys head over there, drop a subscription. And the Discord link is down in the description where you guys can join, chat Blue Jays with us any time of day. Carter, I don't know where you want to start. We got to get into the payroll, the deferrals, how it all works. Is there a better system? Can teams really take advantage of the deferral process? Of course they can. But at the end of the day, that's not necessary. You know, we're waiting for updates. We want more guys to sign with the Toronto Blue Jays. What in the world is still going on with Pistol Pete Alonso? There is news every day, I swear, about this guy.
Yeah, we were talking off camera a little bit, and we've had a pretty hectic 2 weeks with free agents, with Hiroki Sasaki, obviously the Santander news. This weekend, probably one of the more calm weekends that we've had more recently, but there obviously has still been some news out coming out about Pete Alonso, and not necessarily as much for the Toronto Blue Jays, but kind of regarding the New York Mets. You might ask, this is Toronto Blue Jays podcast, why are you guys talking about the New York Mets? Because this directly affects the Toronto Blue Jays and their ability to sign Pete Alonso. It's looking like from multiple different reports that the Mets contract negotiations are stalling out with Pete Alonso. Both sides are getting tired of debating with each other, with Stephen Cohen, obviously one with the Mets owner, and then Scott Boras, being Scott Boras, always trying to get his client the highest AAV, the best contract possible. So I have some quotes from multiple sources from around the league. So the first one is, I don't like the negotiations. I don't like what is being presented to us. Steve Cohen talks about the Mets negotiations with Pete Alonso and the possibility of the Mets moving forward without him. And then I have another one here is in a sign that they have begun to preparing. It is a sign that they have been preparing for life without Pete Alonso. The Mets have told Brett Beatty and Mark Vientos to begin working out at first base early in the new year, the Post has learned. Both players still remain viable at third base, but that Beatty and Vientos have been advised to begin a routine that has included first base in an indicator of how much the Mets plan to proceed unless there is a U-turn to back Alonso. And I've seen, again, multiple reports kind of saying the same thing. That's why I only read those two, is that Pete Alonso and Scott Boras kind of getting frustrated with the other side. Steve Cohen obviously getting frustrated with Pete Alonso. Seems like they're relatively far off in their contract negotiations, and that does give the Toronto Blue Jays a huge window to sign Pete Alonso. All the reports that I have seen have said that the Toronto Blue Jays have offered a higher contract, higher AAV. I'm pretty sure it is around that 3-year mark, whereas the Mets, it looks like Pete Alonso would rather sign with the Mets based off what I've seen, but they're not quite meeting his standards with the AAV. So it's kind of coming down to this Corbin Burns type thing again, which isn't necessarily a great sign for Toronto Blue Jays fans, because we do know how that ended up. But the Toronto Blue Jays, again, have the best offer on the table. Just kind of depends where Pete Alonso ends up wanting to go. Is he going to value the Mets, who debatably have a better shot of winning this upcoming season? Or does he want to get the payday? Does he want to take the higher AAV and sign with the Toronto Blue Jays? With the addition of Anthony Santander, and you obviously get Pete Alonso with this signing, not a bad lineup to look at whatsoever.
No, absolutely not. And I think as all Blue Jays fans, we'd all be happy with signing Pete Alonso. It adds that extra bat into your lineup to surround Anthony Santander, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Bichette. Everybody wants it. The problem is you're 100% right. This completely reminds me of the Corbin Burns situation where the Blue Jays come in with the highest offer, but they have a team they want to go to. That's what it seems like. He wants to go to the Mets. He wants to be a Met. But at the end of the day, I don't know. I don't know what type of guy Pete Alonso is. Is he going to chase go and play for the team he wants to play for? Or is he going to try to take the bag a little bit here with the Toronto Blue Jays? I think it's an interesting conversation because we won't really know what's going to happen, I think, until pen hits paper for one of these teams. And it's going to be a little bit different than the Anthony Santander signing. I was all in on that. I in my head, I'm like, he's a Toronto Blue Jay, before the offseason started. Pete Alonso a little bit came out of nowhere, not a deal I expected to happen. And now the Blue Jays are in for him. I don't want to say all in for him, but highest contract offer. You got to assume that they want to give this a best shot to get another bat now with Jurickson Profar going off the line as well, so he's not an option. Pistol Pete is by far your biggest and best option for another splash in free agency. But obviously, me and you see that he is looking to be a Met. I think him and Boris both want him to be a Met. Yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, obviously, as a Toronto Blue Jays fan, hopefully he does not give in to the tactics. Hopefully he is chasing the bag. You would think that money talks a lot more this offseason, but for the Toronto Blue Jays, money has not been talking whatsoever. We've obviously gone into the debates about, is it the location? Is it the tax bracket? Is it the farm system? Is it just the Toronto Blue Jays not being a very good team last season? Obviously getting 74 wins, probably a little bit of a mix of all of that. But let's move on to our main topic of the episode. So obviously around the league, there has been way more deferred contracts than we've really ever seen before. Kind of just going back to 2000 era where the Arizona Diamondbacks were doing it between 2001 and 2004. Haven't really seen much of it since then. And now we got the Los Angeles Dodgers, who have been the talk around the league. There's a graphic that came out by MLB Network that just had a prediction of where some of the last free agents were going to land. And Alex Bregman was on there, and they predicted it to be the Los Angeles Dodgers. And I went through the comments, and literally every single one was, you gave me a jump scare, almost ruined my weekend. The Dodgers almost got another guy, thought this was going to the Dodgers. So I think it's kind of becoming this thing where the entire league is hating on the Los Angeles Dodgers. And obviously for good reason. It makes a lot of sense if you're not a Dodgers fan that you see all these players obviously going to the Los Angeles Dodgers. You see how much deferred money is involved in all these contracts. It is a little bit upsetting as a fan base. The Toronto Blue Jays, to my knowledge, are the only other team that have a deferred contract this offseason. You can, Braden, if hopefully you can confirm that for me. I haven't seen anything else. But obviously a little bit different in the monetary value that have been deferred. Los Angeles Dodgers have deferred over $1 billion in contracts over these last few seasons, which is absolutely ridiculous. I think anyone can say that. Even if you are a Dodgers fan, I think you should be able to realize that having $1 billion deferred in contracts is a little bit crazy. So what we decided to do for this episode is kind of talk about these deferred contracts, break them down, and give some solutions to these deferred contracts. Or I guess we could start with this. Does there need to be a solution? Is this a problem that the MLB is having? Do you think something needs to change? Or is this just an owners being cheap scenario where every MLB team has the opportunity to defer all this money? They're just not doing it.
There's a couple ways to look at this. Number one, it's the system that's set up. You've been allowed to for years. Because one team is doing this now, who has seen success getting free agents, now we're complaining. So I do understand the thought process of every other team could be doing this. There is no salary cap. Yeah, luxury tax, whatever. There is nobody's out there saying how much each team has to spend. You can sort of do what you want. And if you want to win and you want to try to make all these big moves, you can. So I don't want to defend the Dodgers. Every team does have the same possibility. The Dodgers have a ton of money. That is well known. So again, I don't just want to say that it's fine, because at the end of the day, for me personally, the way that the NHL is set up with their salary cap and how much they're having to spend, it is better for the league. It is definitely not better for the players. And so that's why when all of these talks come around, the players always go and argue that, because they know that if a salary cap ever came in or more strict rules on this, the probably less they're getting paid. So you got to look at it from both sides. But yeah, I think the deferrals are an issue when it becomes more than so much money. Like, I think if it was just a little bit here and there, one contract, one guy, and there's maybe it going on throughout the league, I'm not as beaten up about that, torn up about that. But when it becomes 3, 4, 5 guys deferring money, that's a problem, because again, it's just the parity in the league goes away. So I don't know. Again, you said you have a couple solutions here, so I want to hear them.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to address some of the things that you did say. Is that I guess the opposing argument would be that you have the Los Angeles Dodgers, they deferred $1 billion. When you look at some of these smaller market teams, you just look at all teams kind of around the league. How many teams really realistically have the opportunity to defer $1 billion in contracts? Maybe the Boston Red Sox, New York Yankees, the Mets. You can maybe throw the Astros in there, possibly the Toronto Blue Jays, but I don't necessarily even think I'd throw the Jays in there. Like the Royals don't have a chance. The Oakland Athletics, like these type of smaller market teams, they're not going to be able to defer $1 billion. But when we talk about these deferred contracts, before we talked about salary cap, salary minimums, things like that. It's going to be a very hard thing to implement in both sides. Salary cap, obviously, like you alluded to, that does not benefit the players whatsoever. Like you're not going to see these $765 million contracts whatsoever, because if you sign a contract like that, you're going to have me and you to batting 2 and 3 in the lineup, and then you might have Shohei Ohtani, which is awesome, but it's not going to round out your baseball team very well. And obviously, with the salary minimums, the owners are not going to like that. They're not going to want to spend more. A lot of owners having tough enough time spending already with the current way the league is set up. So we have a lot of cheap owners. Again, salary minimum would be awesome in theory, but I don't think the owners and teams would want to agree to that. But going into some of these deferrals, I do have a bunch of options here. I got 4 to be concise, but I just wanted to go over what Rob Manfred also said about these deferrals and why there could be a solution on the horizon. So Rob Manfred has come out and said that the contract deferrals can be problematic. And he alluded to, again, well, I kind of brought this up before, used the D-backs deferral example in 2004 where they deferred $254 million. Just a quick summary of that. Their ticket prices skyrocketed once they had to pay that deferred money, and the team was horrible because they were in debt. So Rob Manfred kind of foreseeing this. Again, very different scenarios, in my opinion, where you got the Arizona Diamondbacks and then you got the Los Angeles Dodgers, who have pretty much all of Japan on their side. Shohei Ohtani bringing in a ton of money, one of the most wealthy franchises in all of baseball. So I don't know if there's necessarily this huge problem when you're looking at that. I don't think like some people have conspiracy theories of bankruptcy. Don't necessarily see that as being realistic for the Los Angeles Dodgers. But I'm going to go into my first solution here, and then we're probably going to take a short break. But my number one solution, my first one that I think is a pretty good possibility, is kind of doing the same thing they do with the luxury tax system. When you go over a certain amount of money, that number starts getting taxed. I think that can be the exact same thing as the deferred money scenario. You kind of already have this big plan in place. You can kind of structure it based off that luxury tax. Yeah, all you would do is you would tax money over a certain amount of monetary value. For example, I have written down here between obviously 1 cent. It's not going to be a 1 cent contract, but just for the structure purposes, 1 cent to $50 million, the MLB could tax that at 20%. Once you get to $150 million in deferred, again, these numbers can be fluctuated, but the MLB would tax that money at 40%. And then in anything over $250 million, the MLB would tax all that deferred money at 60%. You could also implement that consecutive years thing, but I think with deferred money and the luxury tax, it's a little bit different. If you're going to defer money, you're probably going to do it for an extended period of time. But again, maybe you do have a team like the Toronto Blue Jays, who in theory could lose Vladdy, could lose Bichette this offseason. Maybe a team like that would want to go all in, deferring a ton of money for 1 year, just have that big tax threshold for the 1 year, and they kind of avoid that whole consecutive years thing. But I'll kind of throw it back over to you just to get your initial thoughts on that solution.
Yeah, I think we've seen, again, I think there has to be something done, and I know you'll get into your next 3 as well. I don't think the taxing system works when you're trying to do this for small market teams. Small market teams will be affected. Big market teams will still not be affected. They will still go and do this. And those are the teams that it matters for when it comes to deferring contracts, is those teams willing to spend a ton of money. So I don't think necessarily the tax system in this sense would do really anything to these clubs. They're going to continue to spend, and they'll just spend more because they'll be taxed and they won't care about it. Same, and to be honest with you, that's sort of same with the Blue Jays. I think the Blue Jays would continue to spend if they deferred money. It wouldn't necessarily, or shouldn't necessarily matter. They have money to spend as well, but the Dodgers absolutely wouldn't care about that. I know we got yours to get into, 3 more here. So let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. And hopefully we do find a solution for these deferred money. Attending NFL playoff games is an unforgettable experience. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time, and they have a new feature called Game Time Picks. Makes it even easier getting tickets for events. It filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I talk about it all the time. It was so much easier getting tickets to that Winnipeg Jets Vancouver Canucks game because Game Time Picks was there for me. I could just go in. It showed me the best possible deal. I picked the tickets and I was in and out of there within 5 minutes. It makes it so easy. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Lowest prices guaranteed at Game Time. So, Carters, we continue talking about the deferrals, the payrolls. What are solutions here? Fans are asking for them. We're asking for them. It gets frustrating. So we went through your first one. You said, is taxing the deferrals possible? Is there a certain bracket that if teams are in, it could work? And my rebuttal again was, well, depends on, how this all works, because your big teams are still going to spend, your little teams are still not going to spend. So is it really going to matter? I don't necessarily know. What do you got for a second one? Is there some more options here that could be more punishing to those teams deferring?
Yeah, I obviously have 3 more options here, and you guys should stick around as the last segment. We're going to kind of go over all of them. We'll see which one would be the best for the MLB, obviously the teams as well, and then which one we actually think is the most realistic, what the MLB would actually implement if they were to decide to change this rule on deferring. So going into option 2, this one is set a cap on the amount of money a team can defer. So this is just kind of like a salary cap in a sense, but just with deferred money. So for example, this could be $100 million, could be $50 million, could be $250 million. You just can't go over this number whatsoever. A hard deferred cap in this that would go over obviously the season as an entirety. This is kind of where the Dodgers number comes into play with that $1 billion. I think that a lot of people can see that is a problem that probably should not be allowed in the MLB. I don't think you should be able to defer $1 billion of your salary because, again, a lot of other teams are not able to do that. So that's a pretty simplistic one. Don't really have to go too much into depth. You would just pick a number, whatever the MLB would decide on, and just set that cap as the most amount of money you can defer per season.
Yeah, I you know what? This is the one for me out of, the 2 that were brought up so far. This one would work because you do set a cap, and I think it would have to be spun as we want to protect organizations. That is how this would have to be this is how the league would have to go about this because no team is going to want to, have a cap hit on what they're spending. But if you spin it as we're trying to protect organizations in the long term, this is the best way for us to do this. We don't want to see a team go bankrupt, whatever, because of deferred money later on, 5-10 years down the line. So in my head, though, that's what the league could do to, first of all, lower the amount of deferred money. And second of all, keep teams accountable for, not saying, we're going bankrupt, we want to sell the team, but there's $1 billion in deferred money for the guy possibly buying the team. I think that this just saves the organization, the league, the players, everything, making sure everybody gets the money that they're supposed to, and no team is going insanely crazy with this deferred money.
Well, and what a look that would be if the Los Angeles Dodgers in 2030 don't really think this is actually realistic, but would just obviously sell the team, go bankrupt, and then you have to find, exactly like you said, find this owner that is willing to have the funds to kind of soak $1 billion in deferred money. And obviously the MLB being a business, not the greatest look when you already have kind of fans enraged about this offseason. Option 3 is relatively similar to option number 2, but this, again, the MLB doesn't seem like they want to go to this kind of hard salary cap number, whether it is in total payroll or if it is deferred money. So this one is set a limit to the percentage of a contract that can be deferred. This could be 5%, 10%, 15%. So for example, you have a $50 million contract. You can only defer 10% of that money. That'd be 5% can be deferred, which is $5 million. So that would be an option for the MLB as well. And that math is wrong. We'll go 100 million. So the 5% is $5 million. But yeah, sort of the same idea. This makes MLB teams a little bit more fluid, doesn't really restrict them as much. You can still have 5 contracts. You can have 2 contracts. You can have 15 contracts with all the deferred money. They still have the ability to do that, but you just can't go and defer, $680 million of your $700 million contract, like the Shohei Ohtani case. Gives teams a little bit more freedom in this scenario, more freedom to allow those deferred contracts, but kind of does the same thing as that hard salary cap. It limits the amount that teams can defer and kind of limits the ability to go have bankruptcy problems and just money issues down the line.
Yeah, this seems like a pretty good option too. I don't, again, if you're paying a guy like Shohei Ohtani and you defer 5, 10%, whatever it may be, I mean, it's still a ton of money. And if you do that with 8 guys, it could still be a problem. So this is a good thought. I just don't know if it is a complete fix of this problem. So I'm more on board with that one than the tax system for sure. I think that this would be a secondary option for me that really looks okay, because I think it does. It lessens the chance of somebody deferring $50 million in one season. So I'm more on board with that one for sure.
See, and then I kind of have a 3.5 one, which again, I don't think this one is very realistic whatsoever. You can just have a set amount of contracts that you can have deferred money in. So whether it's 2 contracts you can defer money in, whether it's 3, 4, 5. The only issue with that is it doesn't really solve too much. You can just have your top 3 players on your team have, again, $500 million deferred. Doesn't necessarily solve anything, but does have a cap where you can't have 8, 9, 10 players with deferred money in their contracts. You just have 3. Not going to spend too much time on that because, again, relatively similar. And I don't think that one is one that actually would be implemented. And number 4, probably the easiest fix, could just slap it in. Wouldn't really take too much. I don't think, again, this is realistic necessarily, but just having no deferred money, completely taking out the deferred money rule, don't have any of the deferred money whatsoever. So you have to pay everything up front. You sign a contract, you have to pay that value. There's no way of getting out of it, no way of pushing it down the line. And yeah, just make a rule that states no deferred money. You got to pay everything up front.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of the easiest, again, because you probably will have to wait 10, 15 years before you can necessarily install this, because there are deals made, contracts made. So that's a tougher one, I think, to get done just in that sense. But overall, it's probably your easiest option, less headaches. But yeah, I can't see that happening, because I think even if somebody thought about this right now and wanted to implement it, they're still waiting so many years. And by that point, they might just scrap it again anyway. So there is a lot to think about when it becomes, down to the money, the payroll, the teams, the contracts, everything. When all these talks are going on, and there's probably smarter people than us having these conversations within the MLB, trying to figure out what works the best. And have they done a perfect job? No, obviously not. I don't think any league in the history of existence has ever done a perfect job of understanding all the little complexities and loopholes teams can get through. But I also think something needs to be done. I think we're aware of that. I don't know if anything ever could be done. But Carter, I think let's take a break. I think you've laid them out. You've laid out the options. That's really the only options available. Also, one thing I wanted to go back to, because we did get a comment about it, and you brought this up before the show. Somebody was asking that, or telling us that the Marlins need to spend so much money. And so I just want to clear things up of the salary floor, what happens with all of that. So just people have an understanding of how these contracts and payrolls and everything sort of works. So when the Marlins say they don't get up to a certain threshold of money, it's not like in the NHL where there is a salary floor that every team has to be over. All it does is deny you the chance at a higher draft pick. And if you do it so many consecutive years, you keep getting hammered with draft picks sort of taken away from you. Obviously, we saw that with the White Sox and the Athletics, I believe, just this year. So it's not, yes, they want to spend over that to probably keep their picks, but at the end of the day, if they're not willing to spend, I don't think they necessarily care about the draft picks. So just to clear things up, that's how teams get punished, not necessarily in, they don't have to be over that before their organization crumbles or whatever. It's just a draft pick. So don't take as much away from, the Marlins have to be here. No, they don't have to be there. It's still a choice. The Athletics haven't done it. The White Sox haven't done it in a few years, hit that salary floor. So again, just to clear those things up. Other than that, Carter, let's take a quick break. We'll come back. Let's talk about what our big solution is and which one we think works the best for this league. So what do you got, my guy? Out of all of those options, which one do you think works for you the best option? We'll get into what's probably the most realistic, but for you, which one would you love to see implemented?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head in the second segment. In theory, all of these could work, but realistically, how are you supposed to start implementing these? Again, you could go to no deferred money whatsoever when you have the Los Angeles Dodgers deferring money for the next 10 seasons. You're going to have to set a date and time that this rule is going to implement. You can't just throw it in right now, because what would happen with the Los Angeles Dodgers? What would happen with Toronto Blue Jays? Obviously, it's the Toronto Blue Jays podcast with the Santander deferred money. So realistically, probably can't do that unless you're going to set it for 2035, 2040. At that point, league can change. Lots of things can happen. So I'm not going to say it is number 4. So number 3, set a limit of the percentage. That one could happen, I think, in the future. But again, all of these scenarios are going to have to be down the line. It's not going to be a this year fix. So whether you like it or not, the Los Angeles Dodgers are going to be playing with all this deferred money. It is a little bit unfortunate as Toronto Blue Jays fans, as MLB fans. But when you look at it, again, the Los Angeles Dodgers, whether it's deferred money, whether it's not deferred money, they can still go out and sign all these players. It doesn't matter. They're attractive location, obviously being in LA. They have a great prospect pool, obviously winning the World Series last year. There's a lot to like about the Los Angeles Dodgers organization. But going back to my option number 3, set a limit of the percentage that can of the contract that can be implemented. I don't mind this one. I think it is better than the salary cap. I think, or like the salary cap for the deferred money. I think the MLB is trying to stay away from like that hard cap. They want to give teams as much flexibility as possible. So for my number, I don't think that number 2 is possible. I don't think they're going to set that cap, even though it might help them in the future, would prevent bankruptcies, things like that. You said you didn't like option number 1 with the tax system. And I actually think if the MLB was going to do anything along these lines, they would base it off this tax system, because the MLB is a business. If they're going to implement a rule like this, they're going to want a share of the money. They're going to want to make as much money as possible from these other teams. Taxing other teams is one way to do that. And one thing they could do to make it a little bit more fair for these smaller market teams is that they could pool some of that tax money that they do get and throw it into revenue sharing. Don't think that's going to happen as well, because the MLB is cheap. They don't want to give away money when they could just keep all of it. So I think if they were going to implement a rule like this, they would go to that tax system. But kind of like you said, does that really solve anything? Like the Los Angeles Dodgers are already way over the luxury tax. It doesn't really matter for them. They're going to continue spending at that point. And deferred money, yeah, they're just going to have to keep spending. They're going to get taxed more. Would it prevent them slightly? Maybe. But is it really going to solve anything? I don't necessarily think so. So for me, I don't think anything's going to happen. I think they're just going to keep it like this. They're going to remain with the deferred money. This all kind of going to go to the wayside in a few seasons. I don't think there's going to be any change, but I do think there is a need for change. I think that, well, again, $1 billion is absolutely ridiculous amount of money to be deferred. I don't know if they go with any of these options, but I think if they were going to pick one of these 4 options, they would go with that tax system.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't love that, just for, the reasons I stated before. But I think you're right. If anything were to happen, I think that that's probably the most likely. But I'm with you. You sort of stole the words right out of my mouth. I think this is it's going to end up being a moot point. Of course, everything's going to come, happening this season. People are wanting change. The fans are wanting change, but nothing will happen. Again, it's going to be one of those conversations that when they go into the CBA meetings, they'll probably chat about, and there probably will be conversations around this. I just think that there's no way to get around deferred money, especially talking because it's one team doing it. It affects one team, or I guess 2 if you want to say the Blue Jays, but it's nowhere near the amount. But so I think it affecting one team, other teams, again, I hate to say this. Yes, they won't spend $1 billion in deferred money. Other teams will not do that, but they have the option to. So when you give every team an equal opportunity, even though it's not an equal opportunity, they sort of have that to hang their hat on. They can say that. They don't have to pander to the teams that aren't making the league a ton of money. They can go and say, wow, the Dodgers make the MLB a ton of money. So why would we penalize our most valuable franchise right now? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I think nothing's going to happen. But again, meetings are happening with the CBA, I believe, later this year. So we'll see sort of what comes out of that as well. If anything big comes out of that, we will let you guys know. We will sort of see what's going to be implemented. I think it's more so going to be contract-based stuff for the players, obviously incentives, benefits, other things like that. That'll all come out of that CBA as well. So again, wait and see. Sorry to burst everybody's bubble, but probably nothing's happening.
Well, and another thing that we can kind of throw into this, I think that is also making people a lot more outraged, is that a lot of teams, owners, like there's always this notion that like the Dodgers fans they go to right away is that it's obviously every team has the ability to do this, and your MLB owner is just cheap; they're not spending. When you look at the San Diego Padres, what have they done this offseason? That's supposed to be a pretty good baseball team. They're not going out and spending anything whatsoever. The Atlanta Braves just signed Jurickson Profar, but before that, they weren't going out and spending anything whatsoever either. Then you obviously got the lower, smaller market teams that have the ability to at least make some of these minor signings, can go out and they don't have to spend, again, this $765 million contract on Juan Soto. But these teams do have the opportunity, and they're not spending. Every team has the opportunity to sign free agents. Every team should sign free agents in an offseason, but there is a handful of teams that have not made a single move this offseason. So whether there is deferred money, whether there's not deferred money, these teams aren't making deals anyway. They're not going out and making these transactions. They're not going out and trying to make their organization better. So just credit to the Dodgers for signing all these guys. Again, there's some underlying things that kind of go into why some players might want to play for the Los Angeles Dodgers compared to the Chicago White Sox, for example. But overall, again, there probably is an issue here, but in theory, every team does have the opportunity to do this, and owners are not cheap. Or they're not poor, I should say. Owners are cheap, they're not poor. They have the ability to do this. You don't own a team. You don't own an MLB team if you don't have money. Like, you have the opportunity to spend. You have the opportunity to sign these free agents. They're just not doing it. So there needs to be change. I don't know if anything we presented in this podcast is necessarily going to be that change, but we're just kind of going to have to go see. Since 2000, there hasn't been a back-to-back champion. Since 2000, there hasn't been a repeat World Series matchup. So it is baseball. Lots of things can happen. Obviously, New York Mets not making the playoffs last season or the year before, going to the NLCS last season. Detroit Tigers kind of just out of nowhere making the ALDS. Crazier things have happened in baseball. Los Angeles Dodgers obviously going to be the favorites, probably to win the World Series, probably to win 110 baseball games. I'm not sure what their over-under is set at, but a lot of things can happen. There's injuries. It's baseball. I think we just kind of have to ride along and see how this season unfolds. If the Dodgers go back-to-back, maybe there's a different conversation that we're going to have next offseason.
Yeah, and I still don't think so. I think it's different if the Dodgers go on a generational run and win 5 World Series in the next 7 years. Then I think obviously something has to happen. But I think for a back-to-back champ, again, they're spending a lot, but baseball's weird, Carter. You said it right. You said it correctly. You can't do anything right now because they don't win every single year. So what's the argument? Other teams have the chance. Yes. I don't know. It's a crazy topic because there's a million things that go into all of this. Shout out the Oakland Athletics or the whatever Athletics right now. Because they've actually made a couple smaller, medium signings that I've loved for them. I think that they've made great moves for not a ton of money. They weren't blockbuster moves, but I think they were very smart, well-done moves. So shout out the Athletics this season for a team that really, like, why in the world are you buying? It's like they did. And I got to give them a shout out because that's a team that's very, very interesting to watch. And if you guys, I guess, want to go check out Oakland Athletics baseball, you can go check out their Locked On Athletics with host Paul Sullivan. He does a great job. So he's probably having a field day with this offseason for a team that really didn't look like a ton of upside. Now has a couple nice pieces.
Yeah, if you're going to get mad at anything, get mad at the Oakland Athletics for spending more than your favorite baseball team. Obviously not in the Toronto Blue Jays sense, but you get the picture. Every single team obviously has the ability to sign free agents and make their team better. We want to hear your perspective. Obviously, what is your fix for this deferred money? Do you think anything's going to happen? Do you think it's one of our options? Or maybe we missed an option. Maybe there is a different solution to this problem. So let us know in the comment section. Let us know if we're completely out of left field or you agree with some of the things that we said. We always are looking for different perspectives, especially with this being a major issue in the MLB right now and a thing that a lot of people are talking about. Just want to say thank you guys for watching, the likes, comments. Everything recently has been unbelievable, actually. I think we're pulling some of the best numbers that we ever have with the way this offseason has went, the way that this upcoming season is looking. Hopefully, we do get some more news. If there is a big signing, hopefully a Pete Alonso, Max Scherzer, even if there is a smaller tier signing, again, depending on the signing. If it's a big signing, we're going to be live. If it's a smaller signing, it's, Love Lady, probably not going to go live for that. But you get the picture. We do appreciate the support. And Braden, I guess I'll throw it back over to you. Anything else to say before we do wrap it up for the Monday?
No, it's an interesting conversation that we have here. Again, it's fun to have these conversations once in a blue moon because it's something that not only affects the Toronto Blue Jays, affects the league as a whole. And for people that literally spend their entire existence watching baseball games, it is interesting and it's fun to do so. So I hope you guys like sometimes these like one-off, a little bit not as focused episodes on the Blue Jays in general. but an overarching problem here within the league. So again, give us your solutions. Like Carter said, hit the subscribe button. Always appreciated. Have a great Monday, everybody. Tuesday, whenever you're watching this. And make sure you come back every single Monday, Wednesday, Friday to catch another episode of Locked On Blue Jays. And I think it was middle of February. We will be back to 5 episodes a week. So, yeah, it's coming back quick, right? As soon as the pitchers and catchers report, we will be back to 5 episodes. Thanks again for watching. Take it easy.